LSU will report to camp today. They will, as you've done many, many times, they will get their helmets and shoulder pads and probably take a few pictures and make sure everybody's checked in and ready to roll, and then they'll crank it up on the practice field tomorrow. What's today like for the boys?
Oh yeah, it's kind of like the first day of school. Nothing, nothing too you got to worry about too much. Everyone just kind of getting acclimated. The guys who live off campus, I'm sure they're all going to the same place to make sure everyone's together for camp. And you're getting ready to go, man. You probably got the jitterbugs in your stomachs. Everyone's a little anxious to get out there and start flying around. And this is really when it all matters to me. This is when guys who really have improved themselves are going to get opportunities to go out there and try to make a difference for this football team this season. So everyone's really excited today, but the real fun doesn't start for a couple of days.
LSU released their practice schedule for camp, and with that showed when the media is going to be allowed. And there was one significant change here with Brian Kelly. The media is going to be allowed to cover 2 scrimmages in preseason camp, which is not something the media has had a chance to see very much of at all, if none, really over the last 20 years since I've been around. So excited to see a little bit of that. And certainly from this point forward, we're going to be talking about this team and what they've got and what they've got to do, what they've got to improve on. So I thought today would be a good time to kind of look back at what is not here this fall camp and what they've got to replace and how we feel entering camp about some of the positions where guys have departed. It starts with the quarterback spot. I'll just phrase it this way, Jeremy. Would you feel a lot better about the quarterback spot at LSU if Max Johnson stayed and these 3 guys were also here? If you just added Max Johnson to this quarterback room, would it make you feel any different about this team?
I would feel probably about the same. I think Max Johnson is a solid quarterback, but to me, to do what you're expected to do at LSU, you either have to have a really, really dominant team or that guy at quarterback. And so I don't think that guy is in that quarterback room, and I don't think Max Johnson would probably given me that courage to think that he was. But I think the potential's there, and I think that's what a lot of people haven't seen from this quarterback room. Some talent, guys who have different abilities that they can take advantage of, but none of them have strung it together long enough to really be that dominant force at the quarterback position. So I think with or without Max, I'd still be, kind of waiting for that guy to kind of be that leader that I want to see.
I don't know if it would change how I feel either. I've been as pro-Max as probably anybody in this market. I think he did a really nice job for the most part in his time. I think a lot of people will point to 2 throws he did not make last year in Tuscaloosa, and I was watching those, and I wish he did, and he didn't. But they were not routine throws, and not like he choked. He was under pressure and didn't make the tough play. But I thought he was awesome in the swamp as a freshman. I thought he was great against Ole Miss. Terrible defense, and Kayshawn was going nuts there that day too. But I thought he was good in that game, and I thought he played pretty well in a number of games last year. Certainly down the stretch against Texas A&M when LSU had to move the football, had a 4th down. I thought he played pretty well in that spot too. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's going to be a first-team all-conference player ever in his career. I don't think he's an All-American. I think he's a good quarterback. And so I think LSU has a good quarterback on the roster. I think they got a couple of them. And so I don't think it would change materially the way I think about this room. Running back, Ty Davis-Price and Corey Kiner. You look at those guys. You look at what you've got here with Emory. They bring in Kane. You got Armani Goodwin, Trey Bradford. How would you feel if those guys were here, and how do you feel about the guys that are going to step in for them?
Yeah, I probably feel very similar about the quarterback position. I thought Corey, we watched him last camp, and he made some plays and did some stuff. But as far as being as dynamic as some of the backs we've seen in LSU history, I don't think any of those guys left the program that you really would feel, have that domination factor where they can come in a room and just be that lead dog. But I think looking at the room, I think it still kind of is that way right now. I think of all the backs in that room, I think Emory has the most potential if he did, stay healthy through a season and got those carries that he could possibly have a 1,000+ yard season. But I think it's similar to quarterback and good players, but I don't know if it's those All-American, All-SEC guys.
Running back room's a little underwhelming just across the board. I think Ty Davis-Price had a good career at LSU. Was it exactly what I thought it might be? No. And look, that was a weird career. His second year was a weird COVID year. He got hurt, and then last year you get your coach fired after a month, and whatever. It's just a little bit of a different deal. But and Kiner, I thought had a chance to be a nice back, and I think he'll be a good back for Cincinnati this year. As far as potential goes, Emory, Ty Davis-Price, Kiner, they've all got it. Massive production, not necessarily. Yeah, Florida couldn't tackle TDP last year. He set a school record for rushing yards, but that was not a week in, week out type of deal, and the offensive line wasn't great for most of TDP's time here. So I think all of that is kind of high ceiling, mediocre production across the board. The guys that are here and the guys that have left, we'll see if they can improve upon that this year. Out at wide receiver, you lose John Trey Kirkland, who obviously played quarterback in your last game. Dion Smith is a super talented guy who I honestly don't even know where he. And I didn't even think to Google that today.
I don't think he's chosen school yet. For some reason.
He just said I'm leaving, and I don't know what. I just Googled him. Yeah, it doesn't. It says Dion Smith will go to JUCO after failed Ole Miss transfer. That was in May of this year. So sounds like he's going to be a junior college guy and move on. He's a uber talent. The long arms. He had the big game early in the season last year. Jump ball in the end zone, makes a play. Had 2 touchdowns in that game. But I don't think LSU misses John Trey Kirkland or Dion Smith this year. There are way too many guys with a ton of talent and a couple of guys with massive production numbers, with Besh having a really good freshman year and Kayshawn being an All-American candidate. I don't think you miss anything at wide receiver.
Yeah, that's the one position group where I feel on this team has those guys that have the potential to go nuclear. And I think starting with obviously Kayshawn Butte, one of the best players in the country, I think can be going into next season. Just looking at all the guys in that room, it would have been tough to feel that way about any guy leaving the roster from last season, and looking at production, having a guy who missed the latter half of the season still leading the team in receiving yards. So I think LSU is going to be fine as far as receiver goes. I feel the most confident about that position group going into the season. And if that's another position group, if they can stay healthy, they got a lot of playmakers that can make plays.
No doubt. I'm not concerned about the wide receiver room at all, especially if you get a healthy, I guess 7 now is Kayshawn's number. I would say healthy 1, but healthy 7 plays just the same. So I think they're just fine out at wide receiver. Offensive line, you lose Chasen Hines, you lose Ed Ingram. Those are guys that have played a ton of football. And honestly, last year on the offensive front, it just wasn't as consistent as you would like. You obviously lose Liam Shanahan in the middle, who admirably played a lot of football for LSU and was a fine player. Look, I'd take Ingram and Hines back if you gave them back to me. But I think LSU has a chance to replace those guys with the amount of bodies they have. You just got to find a couple that work. If Tremont Shorts proves up, well, he can't quite do it. Well, can Cardell Thomas and Anthony Bradford come in and fill in, and can they do it? Like, you've got enough lottery tickets, as I like to say, that you figure you're gonna, even if a couple don't cash, enough will. I think they'll be okay at offensive line.
Yeah, I think doing what they did in the transfer portal, another thing, just exactly like the defensive back room. I think without those guys, you'd be looking at an offensive line that could potentially be worse than it was last year. But getting those guys to come help you out in the portal, now you have guys with depth at certain positions. Now you got multiple tackles. You feel like when you mix in Doomerville, you mix in Wire. Now you got Frazier. You bring in Campbell. So you got depth at multiple positions, like you said, at guard as well. So unlike last year, where the guys you did have backing up just weren't ready to play college football and had to be thrown into the mix, now you feel like you got guys who played college football for LSU and guys who played elsewhere. Now you can kind of mix and match and figure out what's going to be the best 5 going forward for the season.
Sometimes you go through your notes and you forget to scroll to the next page instead of just using your brain and thinking it through, and you forget to say Austin Deculis' name, who played more football than anyone who's ever played football at LSU. That is my mistake. I forgot to add Deculis there. But look, you lost a lot of guys who played a ton of football with Ingram, Hines, Deculis, and then Shanahan for a couple of years. It was an uneven offensive line. I think the injuries hurt them badly. Their position coach changing right before camp doesn't help anything. You're playing musical chairs with quarterbacks for 2 years back there for some extent. It hasn't been awesome since the 2019 team, and I think a lot of that was helped by Joe significantly. But it's a group that has a lot of numbers. You just got to find the guys to break through, and I think they got a really good position coach, and I think they've got a head coach who knows what he's doing with offensive line as well. I expect solid offensive line play from LSU this year. If they don't, it'll be disappointing. I don't think it's as good as 19. I don't think it's as good as 11. I think there are better offensive lines that have rolled through here, but I think they've got enough guys and a good coach that they should be able to put together a good unit.
Yeah, and I think for me, the thing that separates the good coaches from the great coaches is realizing what your weaknesses are and realizing how to keep your players out of harm's way on game day. And I think last year with the offensive line, they had just so many times we're dropping back, 10-step drops. Max is holding the ball forever. I think they're going to do a lot better job game planning going into this season and giving these guys a better chance to go out there and play at a higher level. And I think with Coach Davis being in this program for a full year, with Coach Kelly bringing the knowledge he has and recruiting the way he has in the offensive line room, I have confidence as well. They're going to play a lot better than they did last year.
Thanks so much for watching Hunt and Hill on YouTube.
Now do us a favor. Hit the red subscribe button below and throw us a like. We'll see you next time.